Hey there, friends! So today I am going to be reviewing The Initial Insult by Mindy McGinnis, and I actually got this book from my first bookish box, which seems interesting. It seems like maybe it's just going to be YA fiction, not more heavily skewed towards fantasy, which will be fun to kind of get me out of my comfort zone. So this one seems like more of a mystery thriller. It's a very interesting reimagining of A Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. We follow two girls, Tress and Felicity, modernized and feminized names from the original short story by Poe. And these girls live in a town called Amontillado. And Tress feels like she's been wronged, and so she decides to get answers from Felicity in a very, very intense way that also shows up in A Cask of Amontillado. During this discussion, a lot of mysteries come up. Some have solutions, some don't, and regardless of if answers are given or not, the girls relive a lot of hurt that they did to each other in their falling out from being best friends to hardly speaking anymore. Alright, so this is a good one to cut your teeth on in terms of broadening points of perspective. We do only focus on the two main gals, Tress and Felicity. Their names are at the start of each chapter, which helps. Another narrative wrench to be thrown in is that there also is a bit of time travel narratively. During their discussion, they keep going back to certain points in their life. It might be around the incident 6 years ago. It might be around various events in between then and when they're talking right now. So I think with those two big things, the shift in time and the shift in narrators, it probably calls for a little bit more advanced reader. So this book has a lot of social issues, since it's not the typical kind of book that I read about a fantasy adventure where you can still sneak in some morals. This is like two gals in high school, nothing like fantastical happening. So it is all about how we treat each other and social things and stuff like that. Or one of the themes that spoke to me the most anyway was about how in a small town, things are very different. I just feel like person-to-person interactions are different. You could run into them at any point. It could be shopping. You could go to a new doctor and they could be your doctor, or they could be at the office. You always want to be careful about how you treat people. Whereas when you start to get into bigger, more urbanized areas, the likelihood of you running into that person is slim. If you do run into them again and it's in some kind of capacity, oh gosh, they'd be in charge of me now, there's probably a second option where there are no second options in a small town. But I think that just kind of harkens back to a lot of what the rest of the book says as well, which is just kind of be careful how you treat people. You never know what somebody's struggling with. And it goes both ways with the girls. One will say, this is how I was feeling and you did this terrible thing to me. And then the other one will go, well, this is how I was feeling in that moment. And it was terrible for me too. So it's nothing that I think is too mature for any audience, but those are the themes I took away from this book. So I love to see it. Next to no romance in this book. The narration really focuses on the two girls and their relationship with each other and how they interact with each other. There are definitely other parts. We have to build the town. They have to talk to other people than just each other. So there are definitely other interactions, but nothing really gets steamy at all. The closest we get is Felicity talks about a boy that she was seeing, and she makes it very clear that they did stuff, but they basically say it as vague like that. But those narrative parts are kept very vague, so I wouldn't really classify that as too intimate or too mature. Oh golly gee, this book has a lot of violence. If you have read Cask of Amontillado, you kind of know why and what that might lead to. If you haven't, it can be a good surprise, so I'm not going to ruin it here. But I don't think it would be giving away too many spoilers or surprises to say that there's a bit of an interrogation between Tress and Felicity, with Tress being interrogator, and she's not that gentle. She strikes out at Felicity a few times while they're talking through a completely different situation. Tress suffers her own injury, and two, we even see some injuries when they talk about their past. I would probably rank this more mature on the scale of violence, particularly because of the scene where Tress gets injured, where McGinnis describes blood pooling on every surface, and it even starts to get starts to dry, and so it gets sticky. So that made me really uncomfortable. And there were more things, but I don't want to put them in here just in case that makes you uncomfortable. So just be careful if you do think that this book sounds good for other reasons. It can get a little bloody. So I think this book had a lot of good themes that I kind of touched on in the social complexities thing, which was interesting to see. I, for one, though, didn't appreciate being put back in a small town and being put back in high school. I thought it was kind of frustrating that being an adult and knowing kind of how things change once you get out of school, Tress would not have had a lot of the problems that she had if she were an adult with her own agency to be able to like move towns or even just move jobs. But because she is not an adult who can do those things, she's stuck in high school and she has to finish high school. When the unfortunate incident with her parents happens, she has to go to the next relative. And it seems like even if the one who was picked wasn't picked, the only other one that they mention also lives in town. So it's not like she'd be escaping high school or this small town where everybody knows what happened to her and continues to look at her with pity and like just feel weird around her. And yeah, she might still be very reserved knowing what happened, but at least if she was in an area where people didn't know these things, she could try to put it behind her. People wouldn't be looking at her with pity or probably acting too weird around her. It depends on how well she was able to keep that bottled up while she was in public. So that's something that I realize is very real. It was interesting to read about, but it made me cringe internally thinking about how so many people go through that stuff while they're in high school, that there are things that just seem inescapable. Adults can maybe get out of those situations easier than kids in high school. The other strong feeling I had about this book is it was a kind of mystery thriller kind of thing. The whole point in reading a book like that is to hear the clever ending or the twist or something like that. Although we got really good hints at the end, nothing was said for sure. And so on the one hand, like that's really exciting as somebody who likes storytelling and like has enjoyed fan fiction in the past. That can be really cool. People can come up with their own endings and their own theories, and that might encourage people to talk about this book more. So like I get it, but also as somebody who likes to know how things worked and what the plan was, I would like to know for sure. I want that Scooby-Doo unmasked moment. I want a name. I don't want just like strong clues pointing at this person. Thinking of that Batman meme, I want a name! But those were really my only thoughts on this. Although those two things frustrated me, I think they made for a good story, and I did enjoy reading the book. My too long didn't watch is that I'd recommend this book for people who like mystery thrillers. I would probably give the warning about there being larger amounts of violence in this book, and that there is a very uncertain reveal at the end. Perhaps people who enjoy mysteries and thrillers will be more forgiving of those things. But if that's something that might frustrate you or make you uncomfortable, this book might not be for you. I did check though on Goodreads, and at least on there it says that Mindy McGinnis will be making another book in this series. My thoughts are that it's not going to be a follow-up to this. I don't know how much more story there is for these two gals, but instead I think it's going to be another Poe retelling. We have the name Prospero name dropped in here, and I knew that was a Poe thing, but I wasn't sure what, and so I looked it up. And it is, in fact, another Poe short story, so I wouldn't be surprised if instead of doing a follow-up on these two girls in this book, McGinnis writes about another Poe reimagining, maybe talks about this town, just to kind of let you know what happened. But I don't think that we'll be following Felicity or Tress anymore. That was The Initial Insult by Mindy McGinnis. I hope that you enjoyed my video, and I just want to thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope I get to see you in the next one. Bye for now.